Yo, what is going on, guys? Bobby here, and today I finally have what you guys have been waiting so long for, the ultimate draft guide. I spent so long creating this draft guide, and I'm going to give you guys the most in-depth, most detailed draft guide that has ever existed in all of Brawl Stars. So quickly, two things before we get into it. One, it helps me out so much when you guys like and subscribe while watching a video. So if you guys don't mind for all the hard work that I've put in, I would appreciate it a ton if you can click the like button and subscribe. And secondly, because this took me so long, and because, as you guys could see, I'm in a different area, I moved countries completely this week, and I have monthly finals coming up, so I didn't have the most time. I had one of my viewers, Mr. Marcos, record some gameplay. It's not the greatest gameplay, but it's kind of just background stuff, so just kind of ignore that while I'm giving the draft advice. It's kind of just there for your brains to watch something while I'm talking. Drafting is one of, if not the most important tool in all of Brawl Stars, and today you can all expect the best, most detailed, most specific draft guide any of you have ever seen. Now the question is, where do we begin? Well, we have to start at the very beginning, the early basics, so everyone understands where to start from. Look at your screen. Let's envision a triangle. At the top of the triangle, we have what is called control brawlers. These are brawlers, usually throwers or range, like Tick, Sprout, Barley, Squeak, Piper, Bo, Gus, to name a few. These brawlers are meant to help control the map, usually from long range or by shooting over a wall. Then if you look at the next corner, we have tanks slash aggro. Now tank slash aggro, these brawlers counter control brawlers. Why? Because they have a ton of damage and a ton of HP. These are brawlers like Ollie, Daryl, Buzz, Carl, Sam, and Mortis, to name a few. And these control brawlers, they would be broken if they could shoot over walls or have 11 tiles of range and also have stuns, knockbacks, and big damage from up close. So these control brawlers, they can't really deal all that well with tanks aggro at all. But like I said, it is a triangle, so there is one more corner, which is the anti-tank. It's not like these aggro slash tank brawlers go uncountered, because there is a whole other breed of brawlers that just absolutely annihilate them. These are brawlers like Bee, Nita, Sandy, Lou, Crow, just to name a few. These brawlers are typically mid-range, they have high damage, crazy supers and hypercharges, and stuns slash knockbacks that can deal with aggressive or tanks very easily. But if they had all of those things, plus tons of range, they would also be broken. So, like the triangle says, control brawlers counter these anti-tanks. Everything in the game gets countered by something. There is not a single brawler that is just uncountered. Literally everything has counters, and you need to know what counters what. One time I was playing ranked with my brother and he went Jesse into Barley. Like, why are you going anti-tank with a turret into a control brawler that's a thrower? That just makes no sense. And he's a mythic player. So with this draft knowledge that I'm going to give you guys this video, I honestly expect most of you to be able to hit legendary, masters, or even pro. So this is the most basic understanding of draft. This triangle is what you need to understand the very most basics of draft. But to become truly good at the game and truly good at drafting, you must know more. So we must go deeper. This is not nearly enough. I'm now going to go mode by mode and explain to you guys what to draft in what mode, what to prioritize in what mode, and how to make specific picks. Starting off with gem grab. This mode obviously is mostly about control. So you want to be picking control brawlers a little bit more than tanks or anti-tank, at least at the lower levels. You usually want to be the team with better positioning and a better setup, so naturally the best control brawlers are going to be really meta on gem grab. Brawlers like Rico, 8-Bit, Surge, Juju, Janet, Mr. P, and Stu are all incredibly strong and should always be in your team's draft, but that doesn't mean these are the only brawlers that you should pick. You always need to make sure you have a well-rounded draft. So like I said, with the triangle, if you pick 3 control brawlers, all of your brawlers are going to be countered by 1 aggro. So you really have to make sure you're balancing your comp out. Let's take this draft, for example, ahead of us. We're not facing any opponents, but this is just a quick exercise. Your team already has 8-Bit for the mid and Rico as the lane on Hard Rock Mine. You don't want a 3rd control brawler because odds are the other team is going to take a thrower or a aggro and completely counter you because you all have the same weaknesses. So to balance out the comp, I think something like a last pick Carl or a last pick Kenji can be really good, because everything that counters Rico and 8-Bit completely gets countered by Carl or Kenji. And that's how you have to draft with your teammates. You always need to make sure you are covering for them because the other team shouldn't be able to counter everyone, or it's going to be a very free win for them. Gem grab is honestly pretty simple. In my opinion, it's the second most simple mode in the game. Just get your control, get some type of anti-tank or usually aggro brawler to kind of space everything out and make sure you can't get fully countered, and you should be good to go. This takes us to Heist. And Heist is basically the exact opposite of Gem grab, where control is almost fully thrown out the window. You need to prioritize damage more than good matchups. Now that doesn't mean fully ignore having decent matchups, but I'd much rather have bad matchups with good damage than good matchups with bad damage. This list might seem obvious, but some brawlers that are insane on Heist are Chuck, Melody, Colt, Brock, Colette, Crow, Nita, Daryl, Bull, Dinah, Barley, and Barry. None of these brawlers are good for getting kills, maybe outside of Brock. They are all high damage brawlers where if you get on safe, especially with their hypercharges, you can do an insane amount of work towards the objective of destroying the safe. Keyword objective. When you are playing these modes, you always need to focus the objective. You don't want to be that guy going Mandy on Heist, getting 7 kills and doing no damage. Like, that's just not going to help your team. Even if you're playing into bad matchups, let's say you're 0-3 with Colette and you're facing a Mandy that's 3-0. A Mandy's going to get 2 or 3 supers on safe, which is about 20% maybe, but one hypercharge Colette is going to do 25% plus whatever more you're going to do. So you always want to make sure you have those very strong, high damage, good hypercharge brawlers in Heist. Now, you don't always need to be playing those type of brawlers. There are a few control brawlers that I think are really good on Heist. They're typically good because they just become too overwhelming and difficult to deal with while your main damage sources keep coming through. So brawlers like Angelo, Belle, Lola, and Piper are really strong when it comes to just getting a ton of kills. And then you have brawlers like Eve and Rico, where Rico is just doing too much work with the bounces on some maps, or Eve pets are just spawning all over the place and taking up way too much ammo, especially with the hypercharge. So if you have good matchups with that and you have damage dealers on your team, you can definitely go these control brawlers and still have good results. There are also a few niche gadget brawlers that do tons of damage on safe. These are brawlers like Spike with the popping pin cushion, Tara with her Tara pets, Charlie with her Charlie spiders, or the spinny Amber. All of these can take out a safe very, very fast. So if you have good matchups with those brawlers and you can get a good amount of kills without dying, I would recommend taking them because you're going to get good control and good damage if you can get on safe. Here are 3 drafts to show you guys what I would pick in these situations. So first, we have Kaboom, Eve, and Colette. So we have a control brawler and a good damage brawler versus 8-Bit, Daryl, and Griff. Now, I know there are some brawlers like maybe Belle, for example, that you could face that comp with and probably get 8 kills and die 1 time. But I don't know if with a Belle and an Eve, you're doing more damage to the safe than an 8-Bit and a Daryl. So personally, I like Colt. It's not going to be as good for control, but you still have decent matchups, and you can do a crazy amount of damage if you get on safe. Next up, we have Safe Zone. We have Crow and Melody, so we have 2 good damage sources versus Colette, Piper, and Colt. I like last pick Eve here because you don't have a control brawler yet. You have your 2 damage already, and your Eve has 3 pretty good matchups, especially with her pets. So you should be able to do an insane amount of work with Eve and make a lot of space for your 2 damage dealers. And then finally, we have Kaboom, Belle, and Daryl. So you have a tank that does damage and a good control brawler in Belle versus Colette, Barry, and Lola. Here, I like last pick Tara or Charlie because you have good counters. The Tara pets don't get pierced by anything, so you can honestly just spam them and be incredibly annoying. Plus, if you get on safe, you can do really great damage. So now that you guys understand Heist a little bit better, let's move on over to Brawl Ball. And Brawl Ball has a pretty unique meta where I'd say definitely the most important thing is to have a game-changing hypercharge. There are no control brawlers basically in Brawl Ball. There's only anti-tanks and aggressive/tank brawlers. So you need brawlers that have game-changing abilities. Think things like a Sandy hypercharge or a Tara pull, for example. A wider list of brawlers that can make crazy plays are Carl with good matchups, Rico with the hyper, Nita with the hyper bear. B obviously is really insane right now. Gale with the hyper, Ash with the hyper, Buzz in general, but also with the hyper, and then Macy, Mortis, Lou are some other really good examples of brawlers who are just insane on Brawl Ball. You need to make sure you have at least one of these brawlers on your team at all times, because if not, you either have too many tanks or too many goal scorers or one too many control brawlers, and you're just going to lose. Speaking of goal scorers, they're also very useful on this mode, but you usually don't want to have more than one. These are brawlers like Shelly, Primo, Daryl, Buzz, and again, Sandy, which are all very good at scoring goals without having to do these like insane hypercharge plays to actually get the goal. And then finally, although I don't recommend it, you can play some control. It's kind of similar to Heist, where if you have two objective brawlers, you can whip out a control brawler if you have really, really good matchups. But if you have two or more control brawlers on your team in Brawl Ball, I can guarantee you're going to lose at least 90% of the time. Brawlers like Barley, Willow, Dinah, Amber, Spike, Otis, Janet, Squeak, to name a few, are okay, but again, I only recommend this if the other two brawlers on your comp are very strong. Here are a few drafts to show you guys what I would do. Sandy and Max on your team, so two pretty strong brawlers. One of them is a support though, so you don't have the most damage. And you're facing Primo, Surge, and Stu. I would pick Tara because you're lacking damage, and having those big play brawlers is really nice, especially when playing with a Max that gives a lot of support. Next, you have Poco and Crow versus Sandy, Max, and Chester. You have a healer, and you're kind of lacking a goal scorer with Poco and Crow, so I would last pick Primo, even though you're facing a Chester, Max, and Sandy. You can create a lot of space with that Primo. And lastly, you have Primo and Sandy versus Spike, Amber, and Ash. So I can understand why taking Squeak for control, or maybe like even Barley or Dinah, if there are walls for control, are okay. I would totally understand that, but again, at your own will, because if you miss a couple shots, they will be running in your face. Next, we have Hot Zone, and honestly, Hot Zone is a pretty insane mode. Similarly to Heist, but not as drastic, matchups don't matter as much as other modes. The objective in this mode is simply just to stand in the zone and get some time. So how I see it is there are two different types of brawlers that are good here in the standard level. There are brawlers that hold down the zone and brawlers that create space for you to hold down the zone. So the brawlers that create space, these are brawlers like Draco, Melody, Stu, Ollie, Carl, Hank, Mortis, and Kenji. They just have a lot of HP, a lot of mobility, like the Draco Dragon has speed, Melody has dashes, Stu has dashes, Ollie has jump, Carl has the flying hook, Hank is just Hank, I don't know. Mortis has dashes, and Kenji has dashes. Additionally, they usually have heals or shields or just something like that, and they are incredibly difficult to kill. It usually takes 1 to 2 supers and 1 or 2 brawlers full attention to take these out. And while you're taking out those creating space brawlers, you have your hold the zone down brawlers, which are very strong when paired with a space brawler. These are brawlers like Poco, Barley, Barry, if there are walls, Stu, Belle, Janet, Lou, and B. These are all very strong at holding the zone once you have full control, and they are normally very difficult to get out. Now, in a standard game, I like the idea of having 1-2 space brawlers and 1-2 hold it down brawlers. But unfortunately, the cool part about this meta, or what I should say the not cool part about this meta, is that doesn't really happen too often, at least at high level. Most comps have a Gray, Poco, or Barry, just some kind of obnoxious way to get into the zone for free, basically. I would never recommend taking a low damage brawler in Hot Zone. Something like Ruffs or Sprout or Eve, like these are never going to succeed in Hot Zone. The mode is about standing in the zone, so again, even if you have a crazy kill to death ratio, if you don't do enough damage and you don't have enough HP to actually sit in that zone, you are never going to win. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but again, similarly to Heist, you need to forget about matchups a tiny bit and just make sure you are in the zone as much as you can. If you're facing those cheese comps like Poco, Gray, or Barry, brawlers that mess up healing like Crow and Byron with that narc star power, I don't know exactly what it's called, are very strong. Here are a couple drafts that I did recently in scrims that I like a lot that looks like we might lose, but we actually don't. So the first one, we are facing Byron, Lola, and Carl, and we have Draco, Stu, and Lou. So Lola and Byron have the two most range on the map, and then Carl is a really good brawler right now. But the Draco is just creating so much space and taking so much attention from that Lola and Byron that it's super easy for the Lou and the Stu to just kind of sit in the zone and hold it down. Secondly, we have Fish, Gray, and Melody versus Lou, Crow, and Ollie. Lou and Ollie have insane matchups, and obviously Lou has a crazy hypercharge. But Fish, Gray, and Melody just get into that zone so easily, especially with that Gray teleport, that it was a very easy win for us. Don't worry about matchups too much. Focus more on zone time, and you're usually going to come out on top. Now, the last two modes we have are Bounty and Knockout, and I saved these for last because they have a very similar meta and are played very similarly. Starting off with Knockout, this is the most passive mode in the game, even more passive than Bounty. Basically the exact opposite of Hot Zone, where you need to prioritize range, control, and matchups more than anything to strive in this mode. It's not a full guarantee that you face comps without aggro brawlers, but as you guys know, you can't die one time. So most brawlers that are aggressive or high HP, they need 1 or 2 lives to kind of cook up and become useful, but that's just not okay in Knockout. The only way you can really pull that off in Knockout is if you are facing a horrible comp, which we'll get into later. So on Knockout, you want to focus throwers and long range. Those are definitely the best brawlers. So for snipers, you have Mandy, Angelo, Piper, Belle, Nani, and we're going to sneak Jean in there. And for throwers, you usually see Sprout, Tick, Grom, and Juju. Now you can't just have a comp with only throwers and snipers because that's one of the cases where an aggro brawler can come and just take you out. Like if you have Angelo, Grom, and Byron, for example, a Kenji or a Carl, a Fang, or a Daryl can absolutely come and just destroy you. That's why you always need one kind of like anti-tank for them to stay away. See, Knockout and Bounty are very unique. You don't play the same anti-tanks like Surge, Nita, or Sandy because there is far more range, and those brawlers are just going to get absolutely clapped by the snipers and throwers. So you need an anti-tank that has some type of range. And for the most part, brawlers like Pearl and RT are the perfect example of this. Now, as you go up in level, just like in every other mode, the drafts start to become a lot more complicated. This is where things like Gray, Fish, and Cat start to appear, which is harder to draft into. If you go basic snipers or throwers, you will definitely lose to those brawlers, so you need to be able to react accordingly. Obviously, everyone knows about Cat Daryl cheese comp, one of the best cheese comps in the game. I'd probably say that's the best combo you can even go on Knockout. If you're going to go up against that, instead of just swiping up on your phone and dodging, you can try going Cord or Loop. But I'd much rather just be the Cat Daryl in that case regardless. As for Gray, you need a brawler that has some form of defense when he teleports onto you. Gray is not really a threat when he's sniping or shooting you from afar. It's when he actually teleports that he gets his kills. So an RT that can drop his legs, a Pearl that can blow him up, or even a Fang that can stun him, or a Buster that can pull him in are all very good counters. Now remember, if you are solo drafting, you always want to cover for a team's weakness. So here are a couple drafts to give you guys some examples. So here we have Sprout and Pearl, so we have a thrower and our anti-tank. So my last pick would be a sniper, maybe a Nani, a Angelo, Mandy, or Piper, because that's what we're missing. And then secondly, we have RT and Nani. So my last pick would be a thrower because that is what we are missing. Here are a couple more advanced drafts now where you can see both sides. So we have last pick into Sprout, Cat, and Daryl, and we have Pearl and Angelo. So we are missing the thrower here, but the thing is we shouldn't be going a thrower into Cat Daryl because like I said, Daryl can absolutely clap a thrower. So you want to take Lou or Cord last. Probably Cord because Cordelius can also jump and be good into the Sprout. Then we have last pick into Gray, Pearl, and Max. So they have a pretty aggressive comp, and we have Mr. P and Mandy, which isn't very that good when brawlers are right up in their face. So I would take Buster because the shield is very good against Max and Pearl, and the pull is obviously very good into Gray. And finally, we have Bounty. This is probably the simplest mode to draft in, to be honest. Snipers, throwers, and anti-tank range. That's basically it. There will be the occasional Max comp or Gray comp, but the maps are generally very open, so unless they have free matchups, it's usually pretty easy to beat that. The best snipers are the same as Knockout. The best throwers are the same as Knockout, and the same ranged anti-tanks, you guys guessed it, is the same as Knockout. Matchups are everything here, unlike the other modes. So just make sure you understand your matchups. Snipers have a hierarchy. So for example, Belle is pretty good, but Piper beats Belle. But I mean, Mandy beats Piper, which is pretty cool, but then Nani beats Mandy, and at the end of all of that, Jean, just for some reason, well, not for some reason, because you can't return to center a Jean, beats Nani. So you have to understand what's open and what's in play. You kind of have to take brawlers accordingly, but just remember that snipers have counters to other snipers. It's not all just aggressive brawlers, so you have to keep in mind what's open and take the right pick. Throwers are also incredibly strong on Bounty. I would say Bounty is easily the thrower's best mode. Even as a Sprout, you are usually safe into aggressive brawlers as long as you have some form of like Pearl or RT on your team. So you just need to make sure you're not going comps like Piper, Sprout, and Byron, where you have no stuns, no way of really helping yourself besides like a Piper knockback. So you prevent yourself from getting ran down, and you should be safe. Now, finally, I'm going to be talking about brawler classes and their weaknesses and strengths. Now, this could be the most important part, honestly. I want you guys to listen very close to this. Let's start with throwers. Throwers, as I said earlier, are really good into brawlers that can't really fight back when walls are in play. So let's think about bounty and knockout scenarios here. Brawlers like Nita, Spike, Penny, Jessie, for example, they just get absolutely clapped by throwers. They have no chance of winning. Usually the harder a thrower punishes a brawler that's countered, so for example Spike, Nita, Penny, or Jessie, the worse that thrower is when he is the one countered. Now maybe that didn't make the most sense when I said it, but let me just explain a little bit. Let's say Dinah is the best thrower when you absolutely hard counter, and Willow is the worst thrower when you absolutely hard counter, which I think is true. Well, if you have a last pick in an absolutely free thrower game, like you have the last pick in the draft, you're facing Nita, Jessie, Spike, you go Dinah. He's the perfect fit because he does the most when he fully counters. Much more than Willow would, even though Willow has 3 free matchups. But let's say you have the 4-5 pick and they can still take a brawler that counters Dinah. I would play it safer and go the Willow, because the Willow can still have good matchups and do well, but not get fully absolutely countered by the last pick aggro that's going to come your way. Just imagine one of those brawlers are replaced for a Mortis and you had your Dinah pick still, you would be getting clapped and just annihilated by that Mortis. Every class of brawlers has situations like this, and you need to know when it's appropriate to go what. Moving on to tanks, let's take Buzz and Ash for example. If you're facing Amber, Rico, and Bo, which have absolutely no stuns, knockbacks, or jumps, Buzz will absolutely destroy that because they just have no way of stopping the Buzz. Just like Dinah, if you have a free 6 pick, you take the Buzz and you will win every time unless you suck. But just like the Dinah, if you're in that 4-5 spot and they can last pick something like Surge or Cord, which absolutely destroys a Buzz, you can't go the Buzz, because that one counter is going to change the entire game even if you have 2 free matchups. You need to go something safer that can still do really good work, like an Ash or a Carl into those counters. Because even if they go Surge or Cord into Ash, you can still put your rats down and you can still definitely get kills. But there are more to tanks than just this. If you're facing something low damage, let's say Stu, Penny, and Lola, you want to go high HP brawlers that are very difficult to take out, like Frank for example. It's going to take everything in their power to kill that Frank, and they can't go up close because Frank is just going to absolutely destroy them. So no matter what your other 2 brawlers are, if you are facing that comp, you're probably going to win as long as you have a Frank. It's just important to know what brawlers in each class are safer than other brawlers. Now let's move on to snipers. As long as you aren't countered, you should have free games and never die when you're playing snipers. But you don't want to be that guy who's playing a Mandy on Heist. Like, of course, Mandy is going to have good matchups on Heist. No one is trying to kill you as a Mandy on Heist. You can go 7-1. You can go 17-1. Well, maybe not 17-1, but you can go like 10-0 and lose games if you're playing just in like a KD brawler that's not good for objective. Most snipers need to stick to knockout and bounty, where you know you can't really get countered that hard by aggressive brawlers. The exceptions though for snipers are Angelo, which is so broken you can basically play him anywhere. Byron is really good in hot zone, like I said earlier, because of the anti-healing and the heals he can give his teammates. Piper can be a gem mid, Gus can be a gem mid or good in hot zone as well with those shields. Belle is overall pretty decent in every mode, and B, I know shoots a single projectile, but I don't really categorize her as a sniper, even though she does technically snipe. In my eyes, she's definitely more of an anti-tank. And I know this is going to be a little bit vague, but finally for anti-tanks, you kind of just got to take what's needed. It feels like a very large chunk of the brawlers and brawl stars are mid-range anti-tanks, so you just kind of need to take what's best in that area. Like if you're facing a Buzz, you want to go Surge or Cord because a Buzz is ruined into that. But into an Ash, honestly, something like a Crow or an Amber, which can keep more range, is much safer. You just have to know the proper matchups. In general, the best anti-tanks right now are probably Lu and B because they're just very strong and have good range. But again, it all depends on the situation. Support brawlers, lastly, they're very unique. So I'm just going to kind of list what they're all good at and how you want to play them. Poco, you just want to heal your high HP brawlers, usually tanks, and it's very nice to have some type of stun on your team because Poco can die easily to a Carl or a Mortis or something along those lines. Max, you want to give speed to help your teammates and help them charge their hypers. You're kind of just there to give speed, exist, and be annoying. Byron, you want to heal your teammates, make sure you never die, and be the last brawler in the back lines. Use your super to not allow tanks or high HP brawlers to heal up. Barry, you usually want to pick Barry, especially in hot zone when the other team just doesn't have a lot of damage to take you or your teammates out, and just keep healing. Don't focus on killing the other team. Gray, again, usually in hot zone, you just want to get your teleport down so it's easy for your aggressive brawlers to get zone. And then finally Kit, You just kind of want to pick Kit to be annoying and jump on opponents and help your teammates get super. Now, obviously, I can go on and on and on about drafting forever. I mean, there are literally 89 brawlers in the game. There are 6 different competitive modes, 7 if you include Brawl Hockey, I guess, in ranked. I can probably make a 24-hour video on it. But I gave you guys in this video all of the knowledge that you need for how to play every class, how to play every mode, and what to pick and prioritize basically everywhere. This video will be enough to beat 95% of players, probably even something like 97 or 98. But the top 5 to 3% does get more tricky and advanced. If you guys enjoyed this type of video, it was a lot of work, so make sure to like and subscribe. And if I see the video is doing well, I can make a draft video kind of once a week and go more in depth in modes or more in depth on brawler classes, so I can get specific brawler v brawler matchups, specific brawlers on specific modes, and just get very, very in depth so you guys can know that final 5% that you guys are missing. But that's going to be it for my video, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you guys did, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again later.